At my 8-year-old niece Emma's birthday party last Saturday, we were all expecting the usual clown or magician. But when the doorbell rang and my sister Sarah opened the door, the mystery guest standing there made every adult in the room freeze. It was David, Emma's father, who had vanished without a trace 3 years ago, leaving behind only questions and a heartbroken family. But here's what nobody knew. I had been secretly investigating his disappearance for months, and what I discovered about why he really left will change how you think about family forever. My name is Jessica, and I'm about to tell you the most shocking family story you'll hear this year. This isn't just about a missing father returning. It's about the devastating secret that tore our family apart, the lies we told ourselves to survive, and the moment when everything we thought we knew turned out to be completely wrong. By the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes the people we love most have to hurt us to save us, and you'll never look at family mysteries the same way again. Let me take you back to where this all started. 3 years ago, David Martinez was the perfect father and husband. He coached Emma's soccer team, never missed a school play, and had this tradition of making elaborate birthday cakes shaped like whatever Emma was obsessed with that year. The man lived and breathed for his family. Then, one Tuesday morning in March, Sarah woke up to find David's side of the bed empty, his clothes gone, and a note on the kitchen counter that simply said, "I'm sorry. I have to go. Don't look for me. Take care of Emma." No explanation, no goodbye to his daughter, no forwarding address, just gone. You have to understand, this destroyed Sarah. She went from being this confident, happy mother to someone who jumped every time the phone rang, thinking it might be news about David. She hired private investigators, posted on missing person websites, even appeared on local news begging for information. But the worst part? Watching Emma ask every single day when Daddy was coming home. She would just say, "Soon, baby. Daddy will be home soon," while crying in the bathroom afterwards. The police found nothing. The private investigators found nothing. It was like David had simply evaporated from existence. As Emma's aunt, I watched this family fall apart piece by piece. Sarah started drinking too much wine after Emma went to bed. Emma stopped talking about her father, but would leave drawings for him on his empty pillow. The whole house felt like a museum of grief. 6 months ago, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to find David Martinez myself, even if it killed me. Because my niece deserved answers, and my sister deserved closure. What I found was so much worse than any of us imagined.
I started where the professionals had left off, David's last known activities. His final credit card purchase was gas at a station 40 miles outside town. His phone had been turned off permanently that same day. His social media accounts went dark. But here's what everyone missed. David had been acting strange for months before he disappeared. Sarah mentioned he'd been getting mysterious phone calls that made him nervous. He'd started working late more often. And 3 weeks before he vanished, he'd asked Sarah about her life insurance policy, something he'd never shown interest in before. That's when I realized we weren't dealing with a man who left his family. We were dealing with a man who was running from something. I spent weeks going through David's old emails, social media posts, and even his work computer that Sarah still had access to. Most of it was normal family man stuff. Soccer schedules, work meetings, funny memes he'd saved to show Emma later. But buried in his deleted files, I found something that made my blood run cold. 3 months before David disappeared, he had been researching witness protection programs. Not just casual Google searches, detailed research about how the program works, what happens to families, how identities are changed. Why would a suburban father and insurance salesman need to know about witness protection? I dug deeper. David's work computer showed he'd been staying late not for extra projects, but to use the company's secure internet connection. He'd been communicating with someone through encrypted messaging apps that automatically delete conversations. The IT guy at David's old company owed me a favor from college. He managed to recover fragments of these deleted conversations. What I found made me realize David's disappearance wasn't abandonment. It was survival. The message fragments mentioned keeping them safe, no other choice, and most chilling of all, they'll never stop looking. The only way to protect my family is to disappear. David hadn't left his family. He'd sacrificed himself to save them. But from what? That's what I needed to figure out. I started looking into David's past, really looking, not just the surface-level stuff we all knew. David had grown up in Chicago, moved to our town for college, met Sarah, and never left. Clean, simple story. Except it wasn't true. I found a Chicago Tribune article from 15 years ago about a major fraud case involving a construction company. The company had been stealing millions from city contracts, and when the FBI caught them, most of the executives went to prison. But one key witness who helped bring them down had his identity protected. The article didn't name him, but it mentioned he was a young accountant who had discovered the fraud and risked everything to expose it. The timeline matched perfectly with when David had moved to our town for college. He hadn't moved for school. He'd moved because the FBI had relocated him.
David Martinez wasn't even his real name. My brother-in-law, the man who had been part of our family for over a decade, was living under a completely false identity. He was in witness protection, and somehow, after all these years, his past had caught up with him. The people he'd helped put in prison had been released, and they were looking for the man who had destroyed their lives. I found proof in the most unexpected place: Emma's baby book. Hidden behind one of her first photos was a small piece of paper with a phone number and the words, "Emergency contact, Agent Morrison, FBI." David had left Sarah a way to reach him, but only if their lives were in immediate danger. I stared at that phone number for 3 days. Calling it would mean admitting that I'd been investigating a federal witness protection case. It could mean putting Sarah and Emma in more danger, but it could also mean getting answers. On a Thursday night, after Emma was asleep and Sarah was having one of her crying sessions in the kitchen, I made the call. "Agent Morrison, my name is Jessica Chen. I think you know my brother-in-law, David Martinez, or whatever his real name is." The silence on the other end lasted forever. Then, "How did you get this number?" "He left it for emergencies. I think his family deserves to know if he's alive or dead." Another long pause. "Meet me tomorrow at the coffee shop on 5th Street. Come alone. And, Miss Chen, if you've told anyone else about this, we have a serious problem." Agent Morrison looked exactly what you'd expect from an FBI agent. Dark suit, serious expression, eyes that seemed to see everything. But when I showed him the evidence I'd gathered, something in his face softened. He said, "You're very thorough and very lucky you didn't get yourself killed. Is David alive?" I can't answer that directly, but I can tell you that the people who were looking for him have been dealt with. The threat that forced him to leave no longer exists. My heart started racing. So he can come home? It's complicated. David, his real name is Michael Chen, no relation to you, has been living a completely different life for 3 years. He's been working with us to help prosecute other cases. Coming back means giving up that work and potentially putting himself at risk again. But Emma's birthday's next week. She's been planning it for months, and she still sets a place for him at dinner every night. Agent Morrison was quiet for a long time. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Michael, it's Morrison. We need to talk. Your sister-in-law is sitting in front of me, and she's figured out everything." What happened next was like something out of a movie. Agent Morrison explained that the FBI had been monitoring the situation with David's family for 3 years. They knew about Sarah's depression, Emma's behavioral changes at school, and even my investigation. "We've been waiting for the right moment," Morrison said. "The last of the people who wanted to hurt Michael were arrested 2 months ago.
He's been cleared to return to his family, but he's been afraid to. Afraid of what? Afraid they won't forgive him. Afraid Emma won't remember him. Afraid Sarah has moved on. He's been watching from a distance, but he doesn't know how to come back from the dead. That's when I had the idea that would change everything. Emma's birthday party is this Saturday. She's been asking for a mystery guest because she saw it at her friend's party. What if David shows up as the mystery guest? Morrison looked skeptical. That's a lot of emotional trauma to unpack at a child's birthday party. Or it's the perfect cover. Everyone will think it's part of the entertainment until they realize it's real. And Emma gets her daddy back on the most important day of the year. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. I had to act normal around Sarah and Emma while secretly coordinating with the FBI to bring a dead man back to life. Morrison arranged for David to be briefed on everything that had happened in the 3 years he'd been gone. Emma had learned to ride a bike, lost 4 teeth, and developed an obsession with dinosaurs. Sarah had started therapy, gone back to school for her nursing degree, and had been on exactly 3 dates, all disasters, because she couldn't stop talking about her missing husband. The hardest part was watching Emma plan her birthday, talking excitedly about the mystery guest while having no idea her greatest wish was about to come true. "Aunt Jess, do you think the mystery guest will be a magician or maybe someone with a really cool pet? I hope it's not a clown because Tommy's mom hired a clown and it was scary." "I think," I told her, "it's going to be someone very special, someone who's been waiting a long time to meet you." Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather and Emma bouncing off the walls with excitement. Sarah had decorated the backyard with dinosaur-themed everything, and the house was full of Emma's friends and their parents. I kept checking my phone for updates from Morrison. David was ready. He was nervous, terrified, and excited all at once. The plan was for him to arrive at 3 p.m., right after the cake, but before the party wound down. At 2:45, I got the text. He's on his way. My hands were shaking as I helped Sarah light the candles on Emma's elaborate T-Rex cake. Emma was wearing her favorite dress, the one with dinosaurs on it that David had bought her for her 5th birthday, just months before he disappeared. "Make a wish, baby," Sarah said, and Emma closed her eyes tight. I knew what she was wishing for. The same thing she'd been wishing for every birthday, every Christmas, every shooting star for 3 years. At exactly 3 p.m., the doorbell rang. "That must be the mystery guest," Emma shrieked, running toward the front door. Sarah followed, and I stayed close behind, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Sarah opened the door, and time stopped. David stood there, looking older, thinner, but unmistakably himself. He was wearing a suit and holding a wrapped present, but his eyes were locked on Emma, who was staring at him with the kind of confusion that comes right before recognition. "Daddy?" she whispered. The entire party went silent. Parents stopped talking. Kids stopped running around. Even the neighbor's dog stopped barking. Sarah's face went through every emotion possible in about 3 seconds. Shock, disbelief, anger, joy, and then something that looked like she might faint. "Hello, Emma," David said, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry I'm late for your party." What happened next was the most beautiful and heartbreaking thing I've ever witnessed. Emma didn't run to him immediately. She stood there, studying his face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Then, very quietly, she said, "You look different." "I know, sweetheart. I've been away for a long time." "Are you really my daddy, or are you the mystery guest pretending to be my daddy?" David knelt down to her level, tears streaming down his face. "I'm really your daddy, and I've missed you every single day since I've been gone." That's when Emma launched herself into his arms, and there wasn't a dry eye in the entire backyard. Sarah was still frozen in the doorway, and I could see her mind trying to process what was happening. The other parents were whispering amongst themselves, trying to figure out if this was part of the entertainment or if they were witnessing something much more significant. David stood up, still holding Emma, and looked at Sarah. "I know you have questions. I know you're angry. I know I have a lot to explain." "You're supposed to be dead," Sarah said, her voice barely audible. "I was never dead. I was just away, keeping you safe." "Safe from what?" What followed was the most intense conversation I've ever been part of. With Emma playing with her friends in the backyard, David, Sarah, and I sat in the living room while he explained everything. His real name was Michael Chin. 15 years ago, he'd been a young accountant who discovered his company was stealing millions from the city of Chicago. When he reported it to the FBI, he became the key witness in a major corruption case that sent a dozen people to prison. The FBI had relocated him to our town with a new identity for his protection. He'd planned to tell Sarah the truth after they got married, but then Emma came along, and he was terrified of losing his family if they knew he'd been living a lie. "So our entire marriage was based on a fake identity?" Sarah asked, her voice hollow. "My love for you was real. My love for Emma was real. Everything else about our life together was real. The only thing that was fake was my name and my past. But you left us. You abandoned us. The people I helped put in prison were getting out. They'd found me. I started getting threats, and then someone broke into my office and left a photo of Emma at school on my desk. I knew they were going to hurt you to get to me." David's voice broke as he continued. "Leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done, but staying would have gotten you killed." Sarah sat in silence for a long time, processing everything. Outside, we could hear Emma laughing with her friends, completely oblivious to the life-changing conversation happening inside. 3 years, Sarah finally said. 3 years of thinking you were dead. 3 years of Emma asking when Daddy was coming home. 3 years of me falling apart. "I know, and I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me. How do I know you won't disappear again? How do I know there isn't another secret identity, another past you're hiding from?" David reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick folder. "This is everything. My real birth certificate, my FBI files, documentation of every case I've worked on for the past 3 years. Agent Morrison said I could share it all with you. No more secrets." Sarah took the folder but didn't open it. "I need time to process this. I understand. I can stay at a hotel while you—" "No," Sarah's voice was firm. "Emma has already lost you once. I won't let her lose you again while I figure out my feelings. You can stay in the guest room. But David or Michael or whoever you are, we're going to need counseling. A lot of counseling." The most amazing part of this whole situation was watching Emma adapt. Kids are incredibly resilient. And while she didn't understand the complex adult reasons why her father had been gone, she understood the most important thing. He was back. That evening, after all the party guests had gone home and the backyard was cleaned up, Emma sat between her parents on the couch, showing David every drawing she'd made for him over the past 3 years. "I saved them all," she said proudly. "Mommy said you'd want to see them when you came home." David looked through each drawing, stick figures of their family, dinosaurs, rainbows, and dozens of pictures labeled "Me and Daddy" with 2 figures holding hands. "This one's my favorite," she said, pointing to a drawing of a house with 3 people standing in front of it. "I drew it last week. I didn't know why, but I wanted to draw our family all together again." The next few weeks were complicated. David moved into the guest room, and the family started intensive counseling. There were good days and bad days. Days when Sarah could barely look at David, and days when they almost felt like a normal family again. Emma adjusted the fastest, but even she had moments of confusion and anger. One night she asked David, "If you loved us, why did you leave?" David sat on her bed and tried to explain in terms an 8-year-old could understand. Sometimes when people love each other very much, they have to do things that seem mean
to keep each other safe. I left because some bad people wanted to hurt you and Mommy, and the only way to keep you safe was to go away. But you're back now, so the bad people are gone? Yes, sweetheart. The bad people are gone, and I'm never leaving again. Promise? I promise. The real breakthrough came about a month after David's return. Sarah had been going through his FBI files, trying to understand the man she'd married. She found letters, dozens of letters, David had written to her and Emma over the past 3 years, but never sent. The letters detailed everything: his daily life in witness protection, how much he missed them, his fears about whether they'd forgive him, and his constant worry about their safety and happiness. One letter, written on Emma's 7th birthday, said, "I watched from across the street as you celebrated without me. Emma looked so beautiful in her princess dress, and you looked so tired, my love. I wanted to run to you both, but I knew that would put you in danger. Instead, I sat in my car and cried, knowing that keeping you safe meant breaking all our hearts. I found me in the kitchen that night holding the letters and crying. He never stopped loving us," she said. "He was protecting us the whole time. I know. I've been so angry at him for leaving, but he was being tortured by it too. He sacrificed his own happiness to keep us safe. That's what love looks like sometimes. It's not always pretty or easy to understand." Slowly, very slowly, the family began to heal. David started coaching Emma's soccer team again. He and Sarah went on their first date in 3 years. Dinner at the restaurant where they'd had their first date 12 years earlier. But the most important moment came when Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone. "I want to keep calling you David," she told him one evening. "Michael Chen might be your real name, but David Martinez is the man I fell in love with. David Martinez is Emma's father. David Martinez is who you chose to become when you built a life with us. Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Your past doesn't define you. The choices you made to protect us define you. And David Martinez is a man who would sacrifice everything for his family." 6 months after the birthday party that changed everything, the Martinez family had found their new normal. They'd moved to a new house in a different part of town, partly for a fresh start, and partly because Agent Morrison recommended it for security reasons. David had started a new job as a financial consultant, using his real skills, but with his chosen identity. Sarah had finished her nursing degree and was working at the local hospital. Emma had made new friends and was thriving in her new school. But the most important change was in how they related to each other. The secrets were gone. The fear was gone. What remained was a family that had been tested by the worst possible circumstances and had chosen to stay together. As I watched my sister's family rebuild their life, I realized something important about love and sacrifice. Sometimes the people we love most have to hurt us to save us. Sometimes protection looks like abandonment. Sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away. David didn't leave his family because he stopped loving them. He left because he loved them too much to let them be hurt because of his past. And Sarah didn't take him back because she was weak or desperate. She took him back because she understood that real love sometimes requires forgiveness for the unforgivable. But there's one more thing I haven't told you. Something I discovered just last week that puts this entire story in a different perspective. Remember how I said I'd been investigating David's disappearance for months? Well, I wasn't the only one investigating. Sarah had hired her own private investigator 6 months before I started looking. She'd found out about the witness protection. She'd found out about Chicago. She'd even spoken to Agent Morrison. Sarah had known the truth about David's disappearance for almost a year before he came back. When I confronted her about it, she smiled sadly and said, "I knew he was alive. I knew he was protecting us, but I also knew he needed to make the choice to come back on his own. If I'd forced it, he would have spent the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, waiting for the next threat. So you let Emma and me think he was dead? I let Emma hope he was alive, which is what kept her going, and I let you investigate because I knew you'd find a way to bring him home when it was safe." Sarah had orchestrated the entire reunion. She'd known about the birthday party plan. She'd known David would be there. She'd even suggested Emma ask for a mystery guest because she knew it would be the perfect cover for David's return. The woman I thought was falling apart had actually been the strongest person in this entire situation. She'd protected her daughter's hope, allowed her husband the time he needed to ensure their safety, and trusted that love would find a way to bring their family back together. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked her. "Because you needed to discover the truth yourself. You needed to be the hero of this story so you'd understand what real love looks like. David sacrificed himself for us. I sacrificed my own peace of mind to give him the space he needed. And you sacrificed months of your life to bring our family back together. So this was all planned? Not planned, hoped for. I hoped that if I was patient enough, if I trusted enough, if I loved enough, our family would find its way back to each other." As I finish telling you this story, Emma is upstairs getting ready for bed, and David is reading her a bedtime story, something he dreamed of doing for 3 years. Sarah is in the kitchen making David's favorite coffee for tomorrow morning, a small gesture that says, "You're home," better than any words could. This story isn't really about a missing father or a mysterious return. It's about the different ways people love each other. It's about sacrifice and forgiveness and the courage it takes to trust that love is stronger than fear. David loved his family enough to disappear. Sarah loved her family enough to wait. Emma loved her father enough to never stop believing he'd come home. And I loved them all enough to risk everything to bring them back together. But here's what I learned that I want you to remember. Sometimes the people who love us most are the ones who hurt us the deepest, not because they want to hurt us, but because they're trying to save us from something worse. The next time someone you love makes a choice that breaks your heart, ask yourself, what are they trying to protect me from? What sacrifice are they making that I can't see? Because sometimes love doesn't look like staying. Sometimes love looks like walking away. And sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is the space to come back home when they're ready. The mystery guest at Emma's birthday party wasn't just her father returning from the dead. It was love returning to a family that had never stopped believing in it, even when it seemed impossible. And that's a mystery worth solving. But there's one more secret I haven't told you yet. Something I discovered just yesterday that changes everything I thought I knew about this story. Something that makes me question whether David's return was really as spontaneous as we all believed. Because yesterday, I found something in Emma's room that suggests she knew her father was coming back long before any of us did. And if an 8-year-old girl somehow orchestrated this entire reunion, well, that's a story for another day.